I have the Q24 on the Pro frame with the Q-matic software, and I've had that since about January of 2024. You know, I will say I'm not necessarily, I was a novice probably before in 2023, in the fall of 2023, I would have called myself a novice, and I decided to really jump in with both feet. And what's nice about that system is that, one, I can really go through and it allows me to make mistakes, if that makes sense. And so I'm able to go through, I can lay out a pattern, I can go in and modify that pattern when I need to modify that pattern. So it gives me a lot of flexibility, and it gives me a lot of room for, if I've made a mistake, then I'm able to go back and fix that mistake pretty quickly. But you know, there is also those good tools of being able to seam rip, and so if I need to do that. But the tools itself, it really gives me the functionality to be able to go back and fix what I need to fix. You know, I think that there is a lot of tools that are available, and so those tools have allowed me to get into that creativity. So I've been able to use some of the BERNINA websites, like I look at that We Also blog pretty frequently and use that. I have the big book of long arming, which really assists me quite a bit. I'm able to go in, really identify. In some cases, I'll even look at something and say, I'm going to try that. And I will take that and try it on the quilt that I'm trying to do. So some of the tools that are really pretty fantastic are things like masking. You know, I would have said prior to this that I would have never tried to do anything that was custom. I would have only done edge to edge. Well, what's really incredible about the Q-matic software is that I'm able to go in, I can mask this out and say, I've got a square that I want to put a certain design in, and by golly, I can do it. And so it's really pretty interesting what it allows me to do, because I would say now I'm quite proficient, where I would have said in January I was, you know, I didn't know really what I was doing with it. But by the time, you know, we go 10 months down the road, I'm actually able to go in and do more customized quilting. And even to the point of being able to do some free motion, which I would have said, you know, it's so funny. I would not consider myself to be creative, and I always thought I was more of, you know, my background was in agriculture science, and so I was very much about protocols. I was very much about making sure I was documenting. But what I've been able to do is transfer those skills over into this software. And so it's very nice from a perspective of the user interfaces allow me to become proficient. And I think that's one of the big keys for me that I wasn't expecting. So I was expecting to have to really dive in deep. Well, I can, but the software itself has made it simple for me to be able to dive in deep. So I can do customized quilting. I can even free motion, which I would have never thought in my life I'd ever do any free motion. But by golly, I've done it. And so it's really quite interesting that I'm able to do that. But this machine, you know, it basically is the catalyst to allow me to be able to do that. It really has, and like I said, I would have never thought that I would call myself a creative, but here I am, you know, and I'm doing it, and I'm able to do it in a way that I would have never expected. It's, you know, it gives the user interface. You can sometimes look at it and say, well, my gosh, you know, isn't that just a little bit overwhelming? But the nice thing is that there's so much documentation that it will walk you through it. And so sometimes I'll sit there and try to come up with my own little system, you know, and what I have to do is, if I get lost in it, I go back to that documentation, or I go onto the YouTube channels, because the nice thing is that there are a plethora of YouTube videos and channels out there that will walk me through it. So when I talk about like masking, when I talk about using some of those different tools that I would have never thought I would use, I've been able to do that because I go to those channels. I go to the BERNINA website. I go to some of the BERNINA dealers and look at their websites and look at their YouTube channels, and I'm able to get myself through it. You know, as I was really evaluating the machines, as I was looking at, you completely changing my career path, I looked at quality first of all, because quality is a big part of my background. And so, it was quality of seeds. Now I'm looking at the quality of the machines, and then the quality, the output. So what do those quilts look like? What does my product look like after the fact? And so when I look at those Bernina, when I look at the output that Bernina gives me, man, it is repeatable, which I really like, because for me in quality, when I had a seed that I was trying to grow, well, by golly, if that seed repeated, from seed to seed to seed to seed, then I had a good product. But in this case, I can take that quality product, I can have that quilt, and it's producing the same quality time after time after time. And then I think that it's also preventative maintenance. I take good care of my machines. I know from my quality background, you got to take care of your machines. The machines do what they're supposed to do, but do I make sure I clean it before I start? Do I make sure if I've been running it for, 4 hours, I shut the machine down, I clean it up, and because I think that that's what's going to keep the longevity of the machine. And so I believe the product, I believe in Bernina's quality, and I think that to me, it's making sure I maintain it, making sure that I take care of it. And so I think those are really important aspects of it. So, my background, yeah, I was in ag science, and, growing up, my mom, it was one of those things that we had, the first snowflake that fell, the quilting frames went up in the living room, so that's how we went about our year. And it's something I've always seen. My mom hand quilted. She didn't have that ability to necessarily do the machine quilting. But it's something that's been in my background my whole entire life, but yet I didn't see myself as that creative person. Well, here I am, having a lot of background in agriculture. I've worked with cattle, I've worked with plants. Plants were my big deal, but I worked with a lot of cattle. My dad still farms as a 90-year-old man. He still has cattle that he manages every day, but it's that aspect of it. I know that it's important to manage and maintain. I know it's important for me to have a good repeatable product, and that's what this long arm does for me, is it gives me that repeatable product, and I really appreciate that. Yeah. So it's really interesting for me to look at something I did in January and to look at something I do now or at this time. And so it's like I look at that and go, holy cow. It is amazing how I've grown just in knowing and being able to troubleshoot through some of the issues. The first few quilts I had, my first quilt, I called it Ugly Number 1, and it was just it was an ugly quilt. I messed it up multiple times. There was all kinds of problems with it, but Ugly Number 1, I look at it and I'm like, wow, it really, though, I did it. I put it on that long arm, and it did exactly what it was supposed to do. And it worked really well. Now I look at what I did on Ugly Number 1 and what I'm doing now, and I'm like, golly, I really am surprised. And so people keep telling me I'm a creative, and I'm like, I don't know about that, but I think it's that level of acceptance for me to say, no, it's okay. I think I can let myself be that, because I'm not done learning, and I want to make that very clear. I have got a lot to learn, and I'm still, there's not enough hours in the day to be able to get everything that I want to get into my head, but I think that it's amazing, the transition, and it was the ease of transition because of the user interfaces. It was because of the documentation. It allowed me to transition. It was something I saw the colors, to me it just really kind of made it pop. And I like the colors. I like it also because greens are some of my favorite color, just because I love plants, and so I looked at it and I said, it's got this kind of beautiful, to me, it's almost like, in a way, it's got that kind of sunset look to it. And I know that sounds a little bit silly, but that's what it kind of reminded me of, is just this beautiful sunset. And so even though it's got these purples, but I love a sunset over top of the ocean. Sometimes it's got those blues and those purples and the greens, and it just to me, that's what it reminded me of. I really want to get into doing more of the customized quilting. I really want to get more into trying to really just challenge myself because I'm not afraid. I think that's the thing. I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid to mess up. I'm not afraid to try new things. And so I think that's what's next is, I'm gonna try something else. One thing that I learned, this was probably back in January or so, what I did is I took a piece of white fabric and I drew out a pattern. And so I drew out the quilt itself, and I said, well, how am I gonna quilt this? And so I drew it out, and then I went in and I did the quilting on it, and it worked. And so then I already had it all kind of figured out. I had the project saved within the Q, the Q software, and then I was able to go in and implement that on the quilt itself. And so I don't know, I guess it just, to me, it's just, I'm just so grateful that I'm able to do it. Yeah.